As for Lawrence, he'd made up his mind to leave England for good and start what he called his savage pilgrimage. He was looking for a country dimly prefigured in the woods and fields of the Nottinghamshire of his boyhood and described in the somewhat brutal but honest male life of the miners. He was looking for a country whose nature he only imperfectly saw himself, in which magic ruled rather than reason, in which there was sexual harmony and total free play for the instincts. A country in which was practiced what Lawrence called a kind of phallic worship. No such country has ever really existed except in Lawrence's imagination. Nevertheless, he was determined to find it, and so he set off. England was finished, and he was finished with England.
We have the world of blood and the dark gods. I mean, there was this curious, how many years was it? I mean, well, it was 8 years of wandering between 1918 and 26 when I didn't see him because he was wandering all over the globe then, hoping to find this kind of promised land which was obviously not there. The sort of way he perceived the world was so intense and exciting. The point is that you must have both. I mean, the blood and the flesh are there, and in certain respects they are wiser than the intellect. I mean, if we interfere with the blood and the flesh with our conscious mind, we get psychosomatic troubles. But on the other hand, we have to do a lot of things with the conscious mind. Why can't we do both? I mean, we have to do both. This is the whole art of life, of making the best of all the worlds. And here again is one of these fatal examples of trying to make everything conform to the standards of only one world, which is perfectly, and seeing that we are amphibians, it's no good. These were perverse sides of him, there's no doubt about it. But and I think he would have sort of gradually emerged from this curiously one-sided view of life and attempt to make all life conform to one kind of a pattern. I feel now that, obviously the sensual side of man is of immense importance, but again, this is the question of making the best of both worlds. This is the problem is, how do we get it, reconcile it with consciousness? How do we become fully aware of it? How do we integrate it into our lives? I mean, this is the important problem, and of course it's interesting to see what has been done historically in this field to achieve precisely this.
Hi, this is Dr. T, and we are here in a wonderful city in Tuscany of Cortona, the city of Gino Severini, Luca Signorelli, and of course the painter-architect Pietro da Cortona. But here, behind this timeless, typical Italian village, we have Etruscan tombs. The Etruscans, one of the most mysterious antiquity culture. Who were the Etruscans? Well, the Romans were very skeptical about them, or maybe afraid. Many archives were destroyed by the Romans. Emperor Claudius wrote a text historical study about them. Many historians believe the first king, the founders of Rome, were Etruscans. And the Romans, of course, didn't like the Etruscan women freedom. This was a very unique civilization where apparently men, women rights were at the same level. We're going to explore together this fascinating, mysterious antiquity culture across Tuscany, Umbria and the Lazio, where we're going to see necropolis of Tarquinia and Cerveteri. Let's explore this mysterious civilization together. For the English writer D.H.Lawrence, living his last life, he knew he was going to die when he wrote this essay, Etruscan Places, in 1927. D.H.Lawrence described the Etruscans as, for them, all was alive, the whole universe lived, and the business of man was himself to live amid it all. He had to draw life into himself out of the wandering, huge vitalities of the world. 2 years after, D.H.Lawrence died. What could we learn from people who used to live here more than almost 2,000 years? Well, as you can see behind me in the Tarquinia Etruscan museums, we have a good grasp of people who used to live simplicity without stiffness, pretentiousness in antiquity, alive, close to nature, the element, dancing, music, sensuality, and beauty of nature.
Italy today is far more Etruscan in its pulse than Roman. The Etruscan element is like the grass of the field and the sprouting of corn, and it will always be so. Why try to revert to the Latin-Roman mechanism and suppression? We know nothing about the Etruscans except what we find in their tombs. There are references to them in Latin writers, but of first-hand knowledge we have nothing except what the tombs offer. So to the tombs we must go, or the museums containing the things which have been rifled from the tombs. It's useless to look in Etruscan things for uplift. If you want uplift, go to the Greek and the Gothic. If you want mass, go to the Roman. But if you love the odd, spontaneous forms that are never to be standardized, go to the Etruscans.
Here we are in Tarquinia Archaeological Etruscan Museums, and you see these Etruscan sarcophagus from the 3rd and the 2nd centuries BC. You see the gravity, seriousness of the face here of the so-called procuratore, a very important Etruscan man. You can see the social statue is described here in a very mysterious, unique language they had.
In the open room, upon the courtyard of the Palazzo Vitelleschi, lie a few sarcophagi of stone. In it is a man, his body exposed to just below the navel, and he holds in his hand the sacred patera or mundum, the round saucer with the raised knob in the center, which represents the round germ of heaven and earth. It stands for the plasm, also of the living cell, with its nucleus, which is the indivisible God of the beginning, remaining alive and unbroken to the end. The eternal quick of all things, which divides and subdivides so that it becomes the sun of the firmament and the lotus of the waters under the earth and the rose of all existence upon earth. And this is what is symbolized in the patera, which may be made to flower like a rose or like the sun, but which remains the same, the germ central within the living plasm.
Very important was for Etruscans to live in permanent contact with nature. This is the civilizations where we can see in the frescoes, paintings of the necropolis, a constant respect and human simplicity in contact with the gods, which are anthropomorphic superpower of the mystery of nature.
The Etruscans built everything of wood, houses, temples, everything except walls for fortification, great gates, bridges, drainage works, and so on, so that the Etruscan cities vanished as completely as flowers. Only the tombs, the bulbs, were underground.
We are in the necropolis of Cerveteri, and you can see here a huge, funeral tomb from 2,600 years ago. The material here is in tufa. You know, tufa is a volcanic compact ashes, stones, which is very easy to dig. Most of the Lazio countryside has death volcanoes. Here where the remains, the bodies, men and women were separated, in different sections. We can see, let's go outside. Here, the traditional Etruscan house, or the way it may look like, and you see different members of the family where reclining their bodies was here. Unfortunately, there is no anymore any kind of decorations, frescoes. Beautiful. This is a very impressive necropolis. You can see there's some very simple decorations here. This is the tomb of Capitelli. Let's go inside. There is no frescoes here like in Tarquinia, unfortunately, about life, celebrations, true banquet, music, dance, and sex. Sex is not a taboo for Etruscans. You know, it is seen as a celebration of life itself, but more than that, sex is seen as a protection against the malocchio, the evil eye, bad luck, and the demons. Through sex, Etruscans protected their ones in the afterlife against demoniac, negative force.
The great tombs in the Banditaccia are covered with mounds, tumuli. They're surprisingly big and handsome, these homes of the dead. Cut out of the living rock, they are just like houses. The roof has a beam to imitate the roof beam of the house. It is a house, a home. They say that here, the ashes of the slaves were deposited in urns upon the great benches of rock. For the slaves, presumably, were always burned, whereas at Serviteri, the masters were laid full length, sometimes in the great stone sarcophagi, sometimes in big coffins of terracotta, in all their regalia. Most often, they were just laid there on the broad rock bed that goes around the tomb, lying calmly upon an open bier, not shut in sarcophagi, but sleeping as in life. The tomb is empty now.
Here we are. This is the necropolis of Monterozzi in Tarquinia, one of the most important Etruscan necropolis from the Hellenistic times. As you can see, we are in a beautiful landscape, countryside, and here we have more than 600 tumulis, tombs, with frescoes about the everyday life of the Etruscans. Let's explore this tomb over there. I'm very curious to see what is painted here. Be careful, watch over your head. Here we are.
For the underworld of the Etruscans was a gay place. While the living feasted out of doors at the tomb of the dead himself feasted in like manner, away in the underworld, with a lady to offer him garlands and slaves to bring him wine. For life on earth was so good, life below could be but a continuance of it. This profound belief in life, acceptance of life, seems characteristic of the Etruscans. It's still vivid in the painted tombs. There is a certain dance and glamour in all the movements, even those of the naked slave men. They are by no means downtrodden menials. Later, Romans will say what they will, but the slaves in the tombs are surging with life. This sense of vigorous, strong-bodied liveliness is characteristic of the Etruscans and is somehow beyond art. You cannot think of art but only of life itself, as if this were the very life of the Etruscans. dancing in their coloured wraps, with massive yet exuberant, naked limbs, ruddy from the air and sea light, dancing and fluting along through the little olive trees out in the fresh day.
Here we're going to see one of these tombs belonging to the aristocrat Etruscan family, dating back from the Hellenistic time. The frescoes inside are about everyday life. Oh my God, it's perfectly pitch black. We can't see nothing here. I mean, where is the light? I need to use my cell phone. I don't see where is the light here to see the frescoes. Thanks God I got this cell phone, so here we are. I can see nothing here. No, this is not. Here we are, God. I can see, oh my God, look. This is a banquet with musicians, dancers, having a good time, as you can see, more than 5th century BC. That's extraordinary, amazing, so fresh, so new. You know, D.H.Lawrence, the English writer, was fascinating by this freedom we see here. So serious we are with death. Here, Etruscans seems to be more alive than us today. Wow, beautiful, amazing. Okay, I'm going to leave. I need a light. Hope it's going to. Well, it's very pitch black here. My God, where's the door? Here. Well, you can hold this door. Oh, amazing, beautiful. Okay, let's go. This is the tomb of the leopard we're going to see now. Fantastic tomb from the 5th century BC, called the tomb of the leopard because of two leopards facing each other. And this was discovered in the late 19th century. Let's have a look. Oh my God, beautiful. Look, we see what is a symposium in tribute to the person who passed away, the dead person, in honor to the person who died. We have this people having good food, and you see several naked servants. Beautiful. I mean, this is pretty much from the 5th century BC, which is the peak moment of Etruscan culture. And the ceiling has this interesting geometric pattern decorations of different colors, motifs. Beautiful. Seems that the dead are more alive than most of us these days, looking to Etruscans, paintings, frescoes. Amazing. Wow. Okay, let's go upstairs. Living very boring academic times, I think. Etruscans give us a lesson of life.
The dead man reclines upon his banqueting couch, resting on his elbow, with a flat wine dish in his hand. Beside him, also half risen, reclines a handsome and jewelled lady in fine robes, apparently resting her left hand upon the naked breast of the man, and in her right hand holding up to him a garland, the garland of a female festive offering. Behind the man stands a naked slave boy, perhaps accompanied by music, while another naked slave is just filling a wine jug from a handsome amphora or wine jar at his side. The scene is as natural as life itself, and yet it has a heavy, archaic fullness of meaning. It's a death banquet, and at the same time the dead man banquets in the underworld. Above the banqueteers, in the gable angle, on either side of a little tree, are two great spotted male leopards who hang out their tongues and face each other heraldically, lifting a paw. They are the leopards, or panthers, of the underworld, Bacchus, guarding the entrances and exits from the passion of life. And we can see the wavy edge of the sea, the dolphins curving over, the diver going down clean, the little man eagerly climbing up a rock, then the men with beards who recline on banqueting beds. How they hold up the mysterious egg, and the women with the conical headdress, how strangely they lean forward with caresses we no longer know. The naked slaves joyfully stoop to pour wine. Their nakedness is its own clothing, more easy than drapery. The curves of their limbs show pure pleasure in life, pleasure that goes deeper still in the limbs of the dancers, in the big long hands thrown out and dancing to the very ends of the fingers, a dance which surges from within like a current in the sea. It's as if the current of some strong, different life swept through them, different from our shallow current today, as if they drew their vitality from different depths which we are denied. The natural flowering of life. It's not so easy for human beings as it sounds. Behind all the Etruscan liveliness was a religiosity of life, which the chief men were seriously responsible for. Behind all the dancing was a vision, even a science of life, a conception of the universe and man's place in the universe, which made men live to the depths of their capacity. To the Etruscan, all was alive. The whole universe lived, and the business of man was to live amid it all. He had to draw life into himself out of the wandering, huge vitalities of the world. The cosmos was alive like a vast creature and had a great soul or anima, and in spite of one great soul, there were myriad roving lesser souls, every man, every creature and tree and lake and mountain and stream was animate and had its own peculiar consciousness, as it has today. The cosmos was one, and its anima was one, but it was made up of creatures, and the greatest creature was Earth, with its soul of inner fire. The sun was only a reflection or brilliant handful of the great inner fire.
Look, these faces. This is the end of the Etruscan culture. We can see here between the 3rd and the 1st centuries BC, the Romans took control everything, economically, politically. If they are not exterminated, their culture vanished completely, and we can see we're very far from this cult of happiness and life in banquets, dinner, happiness, making love, drinking. This is now people accepting they're going to disappear, sadly forgotten, crushed by a more mechanical, cold civilization, the Roman one. Look the face of each of these Etruscan men and women. One picture worth 1,000 words, as you can see. Very sadly, the archive of Etruscan sculptures was destroyed by the Romans themselves, maybe because they were afraid of their superiority